OD boy. Day we hustle, but the night we OD boy. I'm a OD boy. D boy. D boy. Day we hustle, but the night we OD boy.
Ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, and well, whatever you feel like tonight, it is time for Thirsty Thursday. I am Ryan DeMay. I will be one of your hosts tonight. With us, we've got our special friend. That's right, he's very special, and he is our friend, Mr. Ray Ito. Ray, how in the hell are you this evening?
I'm good. I'm good. I mean,
Look at that shirt.
yeah. What this shirt?
Look at that. Look at that. That's the Ray. If you're not aware of that, that is Ray driving the death van. That's a callback to our podcast Burn and Return, which you can also find here on the channel and also on all of your podcast affiliates, Spotify, all that stuff. And if you do like that, go ahead and leave us a review on there. We really do appreciate that. Matt, he is, uh, well, he's riding a flux capacitor or something right now to rip through the time space continuum and get over here to talk to Ray, you, I, and one of our repeat guests, somebody who was on here with us way back when. I think it was still not even like Thirsty Thursday yet. I think this is like one of our OG pilot member. Like it's not even in his IMDb filmography. Is attributed to Thirsty Thursday. I am talking about our friend Brandon, also known as TurfCulture. Brandon, good evening.
Hello, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Good. Now,
Hey.
Yeah.
I will say that as soothing as all of our voices can be, Brandon has the most radio-like, radio-ready ASMR, put you to sleep, read a book on tape, or narrate your favorite dirty film. I think he could do any of it as a voice actor, but he actually has a day job in the IT world. But like many of our IT friends, Brandon dabbles a little bit, and Brandon, as we'll find out tonight, has gone a little beyond the dabbling. He has taken his relationship with turf to the next level, and we're proud of him. We want to hear all about it. So, this should be an interesting episode diving back in because I think last year, right, we were putting together like this super intricate, detailed program for you to grow low-mo bluegrass in the St. Louis area. And I think if I said correctly at the time, I don't know if I said it was the armpit or the taint. Can you help me out as to which area
I
of
could
the
flip a
body
coin there. Yeah,
Yeah, I see.
you
I
flip a
think
coin
that
there.
our friend Timmy Bluegrass, who's also been on the show, I say the Mid Atlantic is like the armpit, Ray, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
St. Louis area, that area of the country, is more like the taint, because it can not only can it be hot and sweaty, but it can also be uncomfortable. You never say, "Oh, my pits are uncomfortable," but you could have some some Fromunda cheese and some itching and some other things that creep up on you if you're not careful. And so
Yeah, some
we're
horrific
we're
things happen, right?
we're right.
Unspeakable
So
things.
unspeakable things. So
Yeah.
Ray, for the folks that are afraid of that dreaded disease on turf known as crotch rot, we are here to be the gold bound powder here to Brandon's turf program this evening, and hopefully bring him some good thoughts, some
Mm.
medication and medicated. I think is the right word they use. So I'm looking forward to it. So okay, Brandon, for the folks that don't know you, haven't heard of you, lay it on us. Who are you? Where are you from? All the getting to know you stuff, and introduce yourself to our much wider cast of characters that now watches us on a weekly basis.
Yeah, so as the ones that come out of the woodwork that haven't seen any content that I create either on YouTube or Instagram or wherever the case may be. Um, I have a YouTube channel called Turf Culture. I do low mo Kentucky bluegrass in St. Louis, which is um, probably not my best decision, and we're going to talk about that
It's
more.
We're proud of you.
But thank you, and as you mentioned too, so I was the original uh, guest on the All Pro Turf Show, which I kind of look at that as like the pilot episode for The Sopranos. It didn't look quite like the rest of the series. It didn't flow like the rest of the series, but the inner workings were there, right? And so
Yes,
I'm glad I was
very
able
much
to be the
so.
guinea pig for that first rollout. But I'm glad to make it back on the show so we can tear apart my lawn plans from last year and what I did, and maybe help me not avoid the same mistakes going forward.
Yeah, and here's the thing is I follow along with all of your content. And the thing I've always been most struck by is number one, your humility. I think a lot of people, especially creators that go into that space, are super afraid to, show the ugly and not, admit that, listen, like, I'm not a professional. I'm not, I'm learning as I go, and the only way to learn is to do. And Ray, listen, we even screw
Yeah.
up, right?
Yeah. Stuff has happened. Stuff has happened, right, Ryan?
In this,
Stuff has happened.
been my takeaway really has been just the growth that I've seen in what you're willing to try, what and I can see it leveling up. And I'm not blowing smoke. I'm just saying, like, that's the vibe I get is like, hey, this is extremely difficult to do, and I'm doing it, and I'm gonna go push through the bad because I know there's more good on the other side, and that's really cool. So, okay, so when you left us last time, and again for the folks that don't know, you had Kentucky bluegrass, and lay it out for us. What cultivars? When did you establish it? And sort of what was the maintenance regime as far as like mowing heights and things like that going into a year ago from right now?
Right. So we started the renovation the fall of 20. So that was September. I think it was like mid-September. Seed down for a 100% Kentucky bluegrass lawn that was uh, Everest, New Glade, and God forbid I put Midnight into that mix, which I'm
Oh
now
boy,
regretting.
it's all right.
Yeah, but I didn't know any better at the time. But anyway, so and actually that fall I almost had total coverage on aside from a few areas that really kind of washed out a little bit, but um, I seeded that right into a quarter-inch sand cap that I had built when I killed the
Hmm.
original lawn,
Ooh.
and I put that on sand. So I think that's part of the reason why it established so quickly. It gave the grass the opportunity to root a little bit and then kind of spread out, just
Hmm.
because the sand definitely helped big time. So um, you know the plan was just to get something established before winter hit and it went dormant, right? And so
Okay.
that was what I was going for at the time.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting take, an interesting observation. And again, I think that's part of just your growth is it takes that like observation, reflection. Oh, hey, why did that happen? And sometimes you're able to tell, and other times you're instructed on YouTube to put 14 different products in the tank, and you have no idea why it works. So, Ray, I'm curious on your part. And I know that you haven't done this with cool season grass like Brandon has, but what do you find is like the challenges and pros and cons, I guess, on establishing on sand versus a native soil? Because I have some thoughts, and I'm curious to hear Brandon's too, because he just mentioned something there that I think is really crucial to share with our viewers.
Okay. My only challenge would be nutrients. And so I seldom get to establish seed on sand. I do get to establish sprigs on sand. So the thing about sprigs on sand is as soon as those sprigs develop their own, independent root system and
Mm-hmm.
have struck root, that is when I start pushing the nutrients
Mm-hmm.
above and beyond what I do to an established turf grass area.
Well, okay, and I think that makes
Okay.
sense. And so, go ahead on the native soil. Then, what do you see there?
What I see there is I actually dislike native soil because there's often element excesses
Mm-hmm.
and actual cases where the nutrients are present, but they're not available to the grass. So I'm in a position where I might as well act like that soil is useless and it's might as well be sand.
Do you have a do you have a do you have like a David Goggins like talk with the soil? Do you tell it how bad it is and what a
Nope.
terrible individual
Nope.
it is? You should.
Nope. I,
You
I
should.
no, I don't do that because for me, I see David Goggins. I
Yeah.
literally have to just change the channel.
Oh, Ray, say it ain't
I have to
so.
just change. I
We'll
have to
watch
change
some
the channel.
Goggins. We'll find some Goggins
No,
in the after show.
I
I
mean, I
love
mean,
it.
because for me, I find him to be a total turnoff.
Oh, all right, we'll have to talk
I
about
read that
this.
book a couple years ago, and it changed my life for like 6 months before I went back to my normal degenerate self.
You should tweet him that. Literally, you affected like 1.4% of my actual time on this earth, and I'm so proud for it. But we're breaking up. It's over. Sorry, man. So okay,
I like pizza too much, bro. Anyway,
hey,
I digress.
live
Well,
fast and die when you die.
well, sorry. I mean, I just cannot get into the whole fashion of physically killing myself every single day. I just can't do it. Okay,
Well,
cannot.
and that's yeah. And so I think from a turf perspective, right? Like this is it's one of the most challenging places to grow grass where he's at, because it's excessively cold. It can be excessively cold in the winter. It is excessively hot in the summertime. Like there's no getting around it. There's no. I don't see anybody in St. Louis saying, it was a pretty mild summer. It wasn't too bad. It's never
is.
like
I actually
never
I did some content on this. I did some research on
like
from
climatology. You mean?
weather base. No, just weather
Oh, okay,
base. I don't. Yeah,
okay.
I'm not that smart. But days above 90 for a
Mm-hmm.
given year on average, St.
Mm-hmm.
Louis has 45 days above 90 on average.
That's average.
At,
That's average. Yeah.
Atlanta has 35.
Really?
Mhm.
Yes. And then just
Man.
a little bit east of me, Indianapolis has 18. I mean, it's
Yeah, 20. It's
crazy.
20. It's 20 in Columbus. I know. We're
Yeah. So
20
it's
here in
it's
Central House.
insane just how centralized that heat is. That all comes up from the Gulf. We have no bodies of water, no mountain ranges here to regulate temperature. So it's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely miserable for, you know, 45 days out of the year. It's just can't
Well, listen.
just come check it out sometime. That's
Yeah.
all I
Well,
can say. Is
and as we said near the top of the show, it taint the ass and it taint the balls. It's just the taint. So, like, we get it.
Yeah,
So
understood.
okay, the thing you said about the sand there, I thought was interesting because I do believe, especially for rhizomatous grasses like Kentucky bluegrass, for example, or like Bermuda grass that's both rhizomatous and stoloniferous, right? That in sand, establishing those in sand is harder to manage the water, harder from an establishment standpoint, but from a you know gaining coverage, building density, things like that, it's actually easier. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? It's much easier to fail, but it's also easier to succeed if you can get past that establishment piece, right? So I always caution people because they're like, "Oh man, I'm going to sand cap and I'm going to do this." It's like, okay, like you're adding a definite degree of complexity and difficulty there, but there's reward on the back end of it, right? If you can grow it right, take care of it. So I think that's interesting. All right, so you get this thing all chooching and going and everything like that. So how did last year work out for you? What were some of your biggest successes, biggest challenges? And no, I didn't ask the strengths weaknesses question. This isn't a job interview. I assure you. Maybe it is.
so we were. I mean, going into spring, coming out of dormancy in spring, it looked fantastic. I was feeling a little bit overly optimistic and confident at that point that I was going to prove everybody wrong and this was going to work out. Right. There it is. There it is. That was, I believe, this photo was taken probably around this time last year, actually, right
Okay.
before May. We usually get our big surge growth in May. It's our 100% growth potential time at the end of
Mm-hmm.
April and May. So um, color and everything was looking fantastic. This is about the time I started dabbling with growth regulators and DMI fungicides, which set me back a little bit. And
Mm.
and we can talk about some mistakes I made there.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So
So okay, that's that, I mean that looks great at that time of the year. So then, Okay, so it was as you deconstruct, right, and sort of do the post-mortem on the 21 season, okay, let me say this, and Ray can probably back me up here. It's usually, just like any train crash or plane disaster or something like that. It's usually not just one singular moment, right, that you can say, "Oh, right there," but it is many things leading up to that point, and then obviously, like, there's obviously a crucial critical failure. But in this case, do you think it was that piece of mixing PGRs and DMIs like early-ish on, and that sort of set things back, or what's your take on that?
No, it was a culmination of several things I did throughout the year
All right,
that
so
led
let's hear
to
let's
kind of
hear
where
let's
we
hear
got.
the autopsy
Okay.
report
So
direct from your mouth.
right, so the thing I learned about DMIs and regulators is you got to run those at low rates, right? You can't run them together at the high rate. You get a significant turf injury if you do that, and especially if you're regulating with in this case Trinex Pec Ethyl, so Tnex and
Mm-hmm.
Armada in tank mixed at the high rate. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
get a significant amount of turf damage, but it's not going to grow out of that because it's under so much regulation. So at a
That's correct.
time when I should be pushing a ton of growth at the 100% growth potential mark, I'm not getting any growth. And I have damaged turf grass because it's under regulation, it's injured, and I can't get it out of there.
Yeah. There was a product, Ray. So triticonazole, I believe it was, and
Tridiconazole, yeah.
when that first came out, it was all the signs point to it's safe to use with growth regulators, this DMI, this, that, and the other thing, and people started spraying it on
Mm-hmm.
greens, on bent and
Mm-hmm.
Poa annua greens, and boy howdy, it was not fit for service with PGRs. And there that summer that it came out, I would bet, Ray, that there were at least 5 to 7 really, really high end places that fired their superintendents just specifically because they lost greens because of that interaction, right, between the DMI and Trinex and Pack. And so,
I could predict that. I could predict
mm-hmm.
that actually, Ryan, because there was a warning regarding applying tridiconazole to Bermuda. There was a
Oh, I
warning,
could
I
see that. I
believe.
could see that. Well, and again,
And,
okay, so
and
talk about Paclo and or Trinexin Pack at higher rates and what that does to Bermuda.
okay,
Nope. If you're not Telly Coleman, because
typically,
Telly Coleman has tungsten balls to roll in there and just
yeah, and
I
then,
don't understand. Yeah.
okay,
Yes.
but with a PGR of that class, on Bermuda and even on something like Zoysia or St. Augustine, for example,
Mm-hmm.
you run the risk of severe overregulation to the point of causing turf decline.
Oh yeah.
And in
Yeah.
and in fact, there's actually a specific warning not to apply Paclo or even Cutlass to a Bermuda grass green.
Yeah.
You do
I
not
mean,
ever do that. Yeah, you just don't do it. And what that tells me then is the PGRs with a high propensity, to do that, and even the DMI fungicides, be careful because I also know something about straight Balaton. I'm talking
oh
about
boy.
Balaton without it being, co-packaged with the
Mm-hmm.
strobilurin and fungicide and then applied at very high rates.
Mm-hmm.
Do not do that to Bermuda, St. Augustine, or Seashore Paspalum. Don't,
Yeah. I've applied
because
a
you'll be
lot
you'll be
of those.
you'll be rather sorry. And that's one of the bad things that I did to myself once,
Mm.
Ryan.
Yeah.
High rate Balaton to Seashore Paspalum.
I think what the takeaways here are, Brandon, is twofold. Number one, you can alleviate all of these issues with, the plant growth regulator and DMI interaction simply by installing Bermuda and forgetting about, having to spray fungicides in the summer in St. Louis. That's number one. And number two is it should be known that Telly Coleman actually sets off the metal detectors at the airport when he's driving past on the freeway.
So we talked last year about iron cutter, and there's a grower out here that has iron cutter, and
Heartland?
I've seen it. Heartland over in Columbia, Illinois. It's just right across the Mississippi from me.
Yeah.
Thank God you pronounced it right.
Oh, I mean, I may be a little further north, but I'm not all the way up there.
I got nervous for a second,
MYSSISSIPPI.
but it's pronounced Mississippi.
Mississippi. Yeah, you gotta roll the R almost to
Roll time.
but I've been selling that internally here at the house. Not everyone that lives in my house is a fan of Bermuda, so
I mean, how
There-
could you
there's
not
also
be?
that. So here's the thing,
What, let me
In
let,
this-
me let me let me coach you on this sales conversation. Let's hear it.
Okay, so let me show you. Okay, here's the qualifiers. Okay, has to look green all the time, and has to be low maintenance, right? Which Bermuda can be if it's planted in the right place. However, the examples that we have in this area of Bermuda is usually common Bermuda or wild Bermuda that is not taken care of and mowed at 4 inches. And so when you say Bermuda here, that's the first thing that people think of, not low mowed Bermuda grass, right?
Yeah.
And then there's also the stadiums can grow bluegrass just fine. Why can't you do it? And then that brings up an entire different conversation about resources and equipment, right?
Well, then,
So-
I was gonna say, yeah. Then we need to talk about the budget, right? Because the champagne on the beer budget. Listen, here's the way to think about Bermuda. We talked about the taint, the fermunda, all the nasty things that take place with the St.
Bermuda
Louis.
loves
You
those
weren't here for
things.
that. You weren't here for this. Just roll with it, Matthew. Roll with it.
I'm going. You see me smiling? I'm smiling.
I'm saying that here's the way I would look at this, Ray. In St. Louis, in that weather and that environment, right? For the time of year, well, from May through September, Bermuda is the Botox for the taint. It's going to shut down all those sweat glands. It's going to make it look beautiful. It's going to make it look cheery and wonderful, and everybody's going to love it. So I think somebody should come out with Botox Bermuda. I think that'd be great. But
Okay, Ryan.
the green
Ryan?
year-round thing, let's talk about that. Go ahead, Ray. Go.
Okay, was Ryan. I'm going to kind of cut to that green all year part, because if I had to deal with turf grass in a place like St. Louis,
Mm-hmm.
the fact of the matter is that I think I'd make it a little easier on myself and do something like Lomo Bermuda. And then for the parts of the year where the Bermuda is not naturally green, I would just spray paint that some bitch and just go with it.
You would fake
Okay,
natty?
because
Yeah, I would paint it for sure.
fake natty.
Fake
I
natty.
mean, and by the way, that whole fake natty thing grinds my gears. That shit grinds my gears, because it is no more fake natty than someone driving grass to be beyond green with all of this bionite and humic and kelp and God knows what else. I mean, to me, that's all the same. I mean, so it doesn't matter to me. You can't point to one thing and say, oh, that's being a fake natty, yet you're doing the exact opposite. And in my case, I look at the environmental impact of over applying and overusing all that crap on the turf grass versus
Starts
just a
with
little
what?
paint.
Starts with Y, ends with Y.
Sorry, Ray. I did not intend to trigger you.
Okay.
None in apology
So
accepted.
So let's get Matt up to speed. We were just kind of going through the fact that Brandon was one of the OG guests, and that he likened it. I thought this was apt, and this is going to make zero sense to you because again, after you watched Step Brothers a few weeks back, you've crawled back under your rock. But he said that this was very much like his first time was like the pilot episode of The Sopranos, which looked nothing like and sort of feels nothing like what it is now, but you could see the bones of what was there. And so he's very proud to be our repeat guest. And we were talking about the fact that he was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go and growing Kentucky bluegrass there in St. Louis. And well, I listen. Okay. Here's what I'm curious of. And you see all the pictures, you hear about the pros, the cons, this and that, and you still need to kind of tell some of the pros. But to kind of lay that down for us, the pros, and then I'd just like to hear like if you could give yourself a 1 to 10 score, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, of just how you think you did in terms of the results that you had, not the the effort time, all that kind of stuff, because I think you learned a lot. But your pros
and hang on,
and your 1 to 10.
Let me stroke you a little bit here too, and just say that I guess let me put it this way. It is what the majority of what we see on the internet when we're looking at these nice lawns is from this time of year, right? Everybody is real quick to show everything off, from April 1st through, June 15th. I mean, it's just bombarded and you see all these pictures and everything is on point and it's just beautiful and life is great. And then by the time the 4th of July rolls around, there's about a quarter of those people left. And typically they're in like Northern Illinois, Northern Michigan, Central Michigan, Minneapolis, the state of Washington, Oregon, Seattle. That's where you're still seeing a lot of Utah. And then, by the time August rolls around, there's like a 0.1% of what was originally there. And now you're into like, again, Northern Michigan, all these Maine and everybody else is blown out, because you've surpassed the genetic limit of the plant. And then you're really relying on, the skills and tools and equipment and budget you have as a turf manager in order to keep that going. Right. And if you don't have all of those things, then you're literally throwing darts at a dartboard and hoping for the best, because you may have the knowledge, like, I need to be on this kind of prevention program. I need to be spraying phosphite every 2 weeks. I need to have Xteris going out, on 28-day intervals. They're like, but I can't exactly swing $1,000 a month right now, kind of sort of deal. Like that doesn't fit into my business model. That doesn't fit into my budget. Doesn't fit into my plan, or whatever the case may be. And so, it's all kind of for moot. So I just bring it up to say, don't beat yourself up too much on it, because, and for everybody else out there that is, looking at their attempt at growing Kentucky bluegrass right now, and they're all gung-ho about it and they're super fired up. And then I'm just warning you that the 4th of July is going to roll around, and then July 15th, and then August 1st is going to roll around, and you're going to want to jump through glass, really brittle glass, and hope that a large pane of it falls across the back of your neck. And that's not an appropriate response to that. It's just, it's the nature of growing grass in general. You're going to have good times and bad times. And so I think it parlays exactly into what Ryan was asking you here. Throw us some grades out there.
Yeah, Ryan warned me this was going to happen, right? And you guys mentioned it too, right? Everyone loves
to
to
be
show.
gentle.
You tried to really kind of.
I did it in a dad way. I was like, listen,
Yeah.
son, I don't know that this is going to be a good idea, but you know what? You go on and do that. I think it'll be a good learning experience for you. And
Talk about
and I don't think you failed. I don't think you failed at all. So I'm curious to hear.
No,
what
I don't
you
think I failed at all. You definitely learned some things, and you mentioned it too. Matt talked about everyone showing their lawns, peak season, and then those pictures are just recycled on social media throughout the rest of the year until fall comes around and everything's all good, right? I try to be more transparent, and I want, part of the process was showing, here's the good, but man, when it's bad, it's bad. This is what it looks like when things get bad, and I showed all of that. There it is. There's summer patch. Some,
That is some wicked summer patch.
Yeah.
Damn.
That's about what I would
and
expect to see.
That's a whole nother thing. We'll get to that in just a minute.
Oh, definitely.
But the pros, nobody has real mowed cool season grass here. So when people who pay attention to lawns drive by and they lock their brakes up in front of your house and throw it in reverse to come ask you what in the fuck is going on in your front yard, that's pro, right? It's kind of, you like people to tell you, hey man, that looks great. You're doing a good job. It looks better than the golf course we just played at. Well, hey, the golf course has got 100 acres of turf. You're looking at 3,000 square feet, brother. We can't really compare apples to apples here. The cons is, well, if you just plant the right grass in the right place, you won't have any cons. And I certainly didn't do that. So the management of it through July and August was definitely the biggest con. The learning curve for managing a grass type that I had never managed before, especially under the mowing conditions and stresses I was putting it under, was definitely one of the cons. One of my biggest mistakes I made, it wasn't just with the growth regulators and the DMI fungicides, but it was also applying fungicides in the way that is going to be appropriate for the types of fungus you're going to see like with Kentucky bluegrass, right? Root pathogens are a big deal with summer patch. I was applying in a rotation of 3,3,3,6,
Yeah.
allegedly some mancozeb and some Armada, but I was not
You were
watering
spraying your trees and shrubs
any
with
of those in.
mancozeb.
I wasn't applying, so when you apply the Armada, you got to water it in for it to get down to the roots to help with the root pathogens. I wasn't doing. I was spraying the leaf blades, calling it a day, and that's where that's where the snafu happened with the root-borne pathogens. So that's when the summer patch got me. It was too late. It was like quicksand.
Yeah, and I think that's like a I liken it to, you're a chef in the kitchen, right? And you got to know like how to use the ingredients you have, all that kind of stuff. We use those analogies sometimes, and it's like, well, you can whip something up that's nice and tasty and everything like this, but if it's going to give you food poisoning later because you didn't know how to prepare it right or something like that, it's pretty much useless. Like a good recipe doesn't do anything for you. And
It's
I
a
think that's what
custard.
was-
It's runny, but it's a custard.
It's creme fraiche.
Yeah.
So
fresh.
creme
It's
fraiche.
the ovary from fugu. Matt, it's the ovary from fugu.
There was a little bit of discussion in the chat, and I wanted to point out something John Cruz said because he asked what the Cardinals and the Royals are growing. Of course, they're both playing on bluegrass. The Chiefs play on Bermuda. But the thing I learned about what the Cardinals are doing with their bluegrass, this is after the fact. I sent some emails to the grounds crew. Bill Finley finally responded to me, which I was shocked because I know he's probably working 100 hours a week trying to maintain that turf. But one thing he shared with me, because I shared some pictures of my lawn and said, hey, I'm doing this in St. Louis. What kind of tips would you give me? And I'm sure he sat there for a minute. Maybe he smoked a cigarette if he smoked cigarettes. Maybe he drank a few beers before he responded. But he basically told me what I have is irrigation chilled to 41 degrees Fahrenheit. I also have the best sand that money can possibly buy, and I resod this field 4 times a year. So that's how we're doing it. And so,
obviously,
when
you
people
shared
look
this
at a
with-
stadium,
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. I was gonna say you shared this with household leadership, correct? And
Mhm.
made them understand that okay, hey, listen, we're on board with that whole Cardinals idea. Just like to talk to you about the kids' college funds and how they're not going to have them.
Exactly.
Well,
So that was
I was-
the. Go ahead, Ray.
and short of the irrigation system, I literally had Timmy Bluegrass top dressing his lawn with ice every day. He was doing
Yeah,
it.
so it is anybody who looks at stadium environments, and especially more and more, and like Brandon, you sent those pictures over yesterday of the St. Louis MLS field being built, right? And that, I mean, literally for a 100,000 square foot stand of grass, easily $4 million into that field in terms of root zone materials, turf, and all the technology, right, that goes into them having the ability, just the chance to grow good grass, right? And if I can't share, especially here in a public setting, but some of the stuff that goes on to make this all happen. Number one, those guys and gals are just off the charts, insanely good at what they do. And like you're saying, they're given every possible resource to make it happen. And to liken that or try to equate yourself, it's like looking at magazines and trying to say, well, hey, I'm going to base my self-worth on the models and stuff I see in magazines. It's not a very healthy thing to do, right? For a lot of reasons. And so again, I think the hearing you go through it, and like I said at the top of the show, is that I just respect the hell out of that you're showing the true journey, and that it ain't easy. Number one. Number two, there ain't a whole lot of people that skate an entire year without losing some turf. Like it's not the way it goes.
Right.
So and last thing is, something I think, I can't remember if I said it on your show originally, but I know I say it all the time, is like, listen, you tell me about the 3-4 months out of the year that you are okay with your lawn looking like shit, and I will tell you which grass to grow based on your location. Simple as that. It's
We
just
did have that conversation. Yeah, you
yeah.
basically told me, I was talking about different grass types, and you said, you just pick a grass type, and I'll tell you what 4 months out of the year is going to look like.
And that's
Because
it.
that's the reality of it. Yeah.
And so you can manage, and really this is the truth, is that you can manage to the the 4 other months, right? So you usually got 2 months on either side of that bomb 4 months right in the middle there, but the 2 months that are the shoulder seasons or whatever, you can manage to any one of those different periods, right? Any one of those different trimesters, right, within the year, and make it so. So you've got folks that have picked the wrong grass and are trying to grow Bermuda grass in Ohio. I've got 4 good months. I manage for those 4 months and the 2 months on the back end of it. That's it. Rest of the time, I accept that it's going to look not so great. But
And you work all year to get it to look like that for those few months. And that's the thing
exactly
I think
right.
escapes a lot of people, is they don't understand that.
Right. And so, to your point, I get it to, you've got 1 to 10, and then just above that, in Matt Martin's world, you have Chuchin, and I try to get it to Chuchin as best as I can. So that's and they actually took the 11 off all the amplifier knobs right there, PV and the Marshall stacks, Matt, and it now just says Chuchin. So,
That's
next time
as
you
it
hear
should.
Slash do a solo or something, or whatever, that's it. Chuchin. All right, so here we come.
As it
2022. Yeah, it should. It really should. 2022. We're getting into it, and I see a lot of the same things you guys do. People showing their lawns and getting all excited. Hey, listen, I've said this before too. My dead grandmother could grow grass right now until Memorial Day, right? After that, you need a professional or somebody who really knows what they're doing. And, I think that's when everybody else goes into the mode that they simply become a billboard, right? Or something like that. It's really unfortunate when people just just promote shamelessly, things like the products that they want to sell and everything like that. It's just terrible. It's awful. So by the way,
This message brought to you by.
Yeah, just wearing this for my
I'm going to that
tonight.
To that anchor voice you were talking about. Actually, I've been told by an employer that I have a news anchor voice in a small market. So that's a compliment. That's a feather in my cap that I carry with me.
You have a mid to large size college town NPR voice. I'll go as far as to say that.
I think that's my niche.
Sports radio. I mean, you sound totally like the afternoon show on the drive home. You're coming on and you're giving us the updates on everything going on.
Okay, so 2022, we're rolling into it. So first, let's talk about I want to hear about the lawn plan. Addressing the challenges that that you have. Maybe trying to foresee a little bit better what might come up now that we start tinkering with stuff, and then the last part, which we'll get to here in a little bit, but is more so the social media aspect, because I know that's a big thing for you, is the content creation and how you're going to share it, what you've learned there, and if anything changes there, and kind of preview that for folks of what's coming up. So the lawn plan this year. Obviously, the summer patch is a huge concern. So why don't we break that down first? So you talked a little bit about fungicide choices and specifically the application methods of said fungicides. So what, in your reflecting of last year's program and everything like that, like what's going to change this year, and what do you still have questions, if any, about specifically related to the fungicide program, and even more specifically about summer patch?
Well, there's a few things I've done differently so far this year than I did going into this season last year. We talked a lot about when I had my soil test about the estimated nitrogen returns I'm going to see from the ENR that I
Mm-hmm.
had on my soil test. I think I was a 4.3. Yeah,
Wow.
4.3. And so
Wow.
obviously, right when the heat got chooching, as we'll say,
Damn
I was
right.
going to have a lot of nitrogen returns right in the middle of the summer, and I was pushing a grow in, right. So I was loading up with nitrogen, trying to get this thing to grow in. Bad idea, which I think led to some of the issues. So I've really pulled back a lot on the inputs. Um, and- and Thank you, love my lawn. I appreciate that. I've pulled back on the inputs quite a bit, and I'm gonna kind of observe and see what kind of changes that I see just from backing off of nitrogen inputs. I think at this point of the year, I've got less than a quarter pound of nitrogen on the lawn so far,
Wow.
and it's actually looking really good. So I'm not gonna even mess with it. Soil temperatures are getting to the point now where I need to start considering some windows for fungicide application. So, um, Ryan, let's pretend you live in St. Louis. You have a low cut Kentucky bluegrass lawn. Soil temperatures are somewhere between 65 and 70 degrees, or at least getting there to that point. And you've got a decision to make. You need to treat for some of these root pathogens. What are you going to go with?
So I'm definitely going to look at a tank mix that has both a strobe and a DMI in it, right? And as far as what's better than the other, I'd have to go look at the most recent research and kind of see of if there's really been any discernible difference. I know here in Ohio, and the pathologists that we have here, they will tell you that it's sort of what you have on the shelf for the most part, in the sense of a DMI, and then particularly azoxystrobin are going to be sort of your best bets, right, to get down. So you make that initial app. The critical factor here is going to be checking your soil temps, and that 65 mark is really your critical value. So that's at a 2-inch depth, and one of the things that I would, if you haven't looked into it, so probably the two preeminent, I'll just say the preeminent institution as far as research on summer patch goes is by far and away Rutgers. Bruce Clark, their turf pathologist who just recently retired from there, literally wrote the book on that in anthracnose. So I'd highly encourage you to go look through. Every year they do their field day, and they have the Rutgers turfgrass proceedings, which they publish in a PDF format. Fantastic, just shitloads of data, shitloads of some raw data and some interpretations, and showing efficacy trials and things like that. And so you'll get to understand that a little bit better. They actually do a fair bit of work too on lawns, right? So another person in particular who was at Rutgers for a time and did his some of his postgraduate work there, actually also an Ohio State guy, is John Inguagiato. John is a turfgrass pathologist and professor at UConn now. So John has a really unique understanding of that whole early timing factor. And one of the things that he would say is, again, that 65-degree mark, and checking that basically about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, sometime that between that 2 and 4 when you're at peak soil temperature. So you're really getting as precise as you possibly can. I know that's tough if you have a day job and you can't get there and do that. And I know it's a little bit easier for you than some others, but don't break your back, but that's kind of where you want to be. So you get to that mark for about 3 days straight. That's your trigger to make that application. And this spring here has been exceedingly difficult because, at least here in Ohio, and I don't know what it's been like in St. Louis, we've been fluctuating like really close to that 60 to 65 mark and just, waffling back and forth. And so it's back down right now. And I think a bunch of people are going to get burned. A spring like this one here, at least in the upper part of the Midwest, is a tough one for a lot of these early season timings when we come down to fungicides and even herbicides to a certain extent. So back to the summer patch thing. So if you can mix those two, make that first app, make sure that you water it in quickly. There's some good work out of NC State just recently where they're looking at, pesticide, not fate necessarily, but absorption into the plant, like through the root system, and when they irrigate immediately after application. I think they went like 15 minutes, a half an hour, and like 4 hours. In the difference, right, in uptake, and I can't remember the quantification there, but massive difference in between immediately making that application of water, right, and getting irrigated in versus waiting, right? So the trick there again is every yard or turf system is different. So you want to make sure that you get enough water down to get it into the root zone, but you don't want to push it past, and you also don't want to pussyfoot around and just let it hang up in the thatch. So those are other considerations, and again, points of failure. I can tell you, we would spray for, this is back in my golf course days, but spray for summer patch on like the shortcut rough right up around the greens, right? Areas that were high compaction, high traffic, primed for summer patch development. And what we found is we'd have to actually go out and aerate, right? So do aerification prior to, just ahead of that, just to get the fungicide down into the soil profile. We get smoked every year. We tried it on a couple holes. Miraculously, those worked. Everything else got absolutely riddled with it, even though we spent an ungodly amount on fungicide. And so, like you said, you live and you learn. So if you make that first application, you're going to follow that up 4 weeks later, right, with another application, same timing. And then here's the unfortunate part about root-borne pathogens is you got to wait and hope. There's no, when you get down to it, I think you start to understand in the weather conditions that you're going to most likely see it in, number one. And so you can start really looking closely at your turf and what's going on. Situation, it's here and it's already affecting us, man. Like anything you spray on it it's a fungustat at that point. People always think fungicide, well, it's going to knock it down, it's going to clear it up, and everything's going to get better. No, it's just literally going to stop it from getting much worse, provided you can get that to the target site. And so this is one of the hardest diseases, I think, to nail, because the latency between when it starts to manifest itself and when you actually see signs and symptoms is so long. You don't know if you're right, or you don't know heads or tails until it's too late. That's the unfortunate part. So, we can talk a little bit about the cultural things that you can do to manage it as well, but on the fungicide piece, that's where I'd be looking at is the DMI and the strobilurin. So I've verbal diarrheaed enough. That's I don't know, and also appropriate spray volume too. That's another thing, is you really need to be at 2 gallons per 1,000 or north of that for sure. So don't discount that. Nozzle droplet size, don't get it hung up on the turf. Try to get it down in there as quickly as you can. And if you're going to irrigate it, really doesn't matter. But that 2 gallons is going to be critical to making sure that you have adequate coverage. Gentlemen, what do you think?
Because I've ever had to deal with before, so that's why I'm kind of listening like a child in class. And I was going to ask, and I only asked this because I've only seen it around. I've never been able to really play around with this because I have no Kentucky bluegrass to play around with. But have you tried, in combination with what you were currently doing, did you play around with playing?
Sorry, you cut out right when you. Have I tried what?
Manganese sulfate.
I have not.
That was going to be my cultural thing. Yeah. So, do we have a soil test?
Not for this year. I didn't do a soil test this year. I don't do one every year. I do it every other year or every 2 years.
Okay.
You and me both.
Well, in part 2, I didn't want you to beat me up over the Milorganite thing again, so
Listen, I had forgotten all about it until you mentioned it again, and like I said on last week's episode,
that ass, boy.
I'm a
Whoop
boiling
that
pot
ass.
of rage, and I'm about to explode. Like that's about to happen now again.
No, I
Okay.
didn't do one. My pH is always, the last few years has been, in between 6.6 and 7. I know, miners. We talked about it at length last year, and I just kind of came to the conclusion I really don't need to do it. Just manage
Mhm.
it, and try to manage the phosphorus around was really the only takeaway from it. So I figure
Mhm.
every few years it'd probably be good to kind of just make sure that those are coming down, and then two, that make sure the pH is still somewhere between a 6 and a 7. So uh, I don't
Yeah, I
really,
think.
when I see people do multiple soil tests in a year, I always wonder why, or why are you doing that? What's the point of
You know,
doing multiple soil?
uh,
I do
the only
too.
thing I can see that being useful in is in if you're 90 or more percent sand and things can change quickly, and you have the ability to change things quickly from a resources standpoint, then
Touche.
that's the but that we're talking, I don't know, 2% of the turf growing public here, maybe. I don't know. So
Actually,
you're fine. What are you gonna say, Ray?
you're fine. And to add to that whole, circling back to the summer patch thing, make note that the strobilurin fungicides and the DMIs, when it comes to a patch disease, those are entirely preventative. And if you did need to make a reactive or curative application for a patch disease, you would actually be looking at 3336.
Hmm.
So, however, 3336 at current legal labeled rates is not a very efficacious preventative for patch diseases.
Hmm. Yeah,
I mean, it's just
yeah.
and that is something that I've found through years of experience, because I have people telling me, "Oh, but I put down, say, I don't know, Headway or Armada, but I already have the patches forming." And I say, "Well, your time to have applied that was literally about a month and a half ago. You're a bit late. Now you're
Mm.
into, when you actually see summer patch or its relative NRS, also known as necrotic ring spot, you are literally looking at Cleary 3336.
Mhm.
And with Cleary 3336, you are watering in that application yesterday. You are not letting it irrigate in the next morning or, you know, the next week or whatever. No, you are watering that in right now.
Yeah, and
If you
so go ahead.
if you hope to, to even get any efficacy out of that application.
Fucking Derek. Derek is
Derek.
literally we're not even on the main stage of the strip club. Derek is literally on the side stage right now throwing $5 bills at our G strings. Thank you, Derek. We love you. Uh so okay, a few things here, a few other cultural things to think about too. So, you know, soil compaction can definitely have an effect on this in terms of just overall root health, right? So once we get into that whole disease triangle, go ahead, Brett. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask you, Demay, and Johnny Fescue asked, are there negatives to too low nitrogen levels on bluegrass? So, and this is reference back to Brandon saying, he's run a quarter pound of N. Are you opening up the door, say, for like increased dollar spot pressure by doing that, or are there any kind of secondary effects that go along with it?
So dollar spot and rust are the two that jump out. Maybe red thread a little bit. Those would be the ones that would be most consequential to too low of N. Like for instance, like a dollar spot, we know that if our tissue levels of N, which in the textbook should be at 6%, in real life you're somewhere between 4 and 5, right? We know that if we fall below that 4% range or 4% value, that the incidence of dollar spot increases dramatically at that point. So, that's a function of, I think what Brandon was trying to say with those quarter-pound shots was that his estimated nitrogen return from his soil test last year was through the fucking roof. I mean, it was high, right? So, I think there he was just probably, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but being a little cautious, right, on what you put out, because, if your ENR is that high and you're making applications, it's a lot easier to put more down than it is to be like, oh shit, I'm juiced and it's July and everything is rip roaring and we're chooching. We need to get a chooching drawing. J Pink, put that on the list.
Does AVE have a chooching sticker?
Is that an AVE thing?
Yeah, so I totally stole chooching from AVE.
So we're gonna owe him like $7 Canadian for royalties on this shit tonight.
Well, $7 US, which is like 7,000 Canadian
That's
dollars.
The loony,
yeah,
right? Loony, right?
7,000 loonies. But luckily, it's not too big of a hit on our wallet.
We'll just buy him a case of Michelob, or not Michelob, but Molson Triple X.
Oh, you know he'd drink it.
Yeah.
You know he would drink it.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
So
the
those are the consequential things for the low end. I think Brandon was just trying to be mindful of that as he went through.
Yeah, and just to add to that too. So
Sure.
obviously, I was pushing, kind of growing conditions again back in the fall, right? So I probably applied 2 pounds of nitrogen between mid-September and Thanksgiving. So I knew that I had really loaded the lawn up with nitrogen before dormancy hit in, and I mean that literally came out of spring like Hulk Hogan ripping off a tank like a T. You know what I mean? He's just like the bluegrass came out and it just came out strong, and I just didn't think it needed any inputs, So with all of those things considered, I was like, well, I'm just going to give it a little bit of ammonium sulfate. I gave it a quarter pound of ammonium sulfate like 2 weeks ago, and I don't really have any reservations about it, to be quite honest with you.
Well, hey, I don't think that was an end management issue or anything like that. So the only other things, like these guys are saying, I can't remember off the top of my head, and you'll find it in the Rutgers literature, but I do want to say it's somewhere in the 45 to 55 range parts per million Malic 3 on the critical level of manganese for summer patch incidents. So, definitely taking a look at that. And yeah, manganese sulfate is your friend.
Have they correlated that to a tissue level? I'm curious. Like like sometimes you'll hear tissue levels in response to dollar spot.
I can't.
I'm curious about manganese and summer patch. Okay. It's fascinating to me, right? Because how many you don't see a lot of repeatable data in regards to a specific nutrient inhibiting the development of disease, right? And that's why I get so hung up on this, and I bring it up every damn time, I know. But it's fascinating to me because it's one of the few instances you hear about it with repeatability having an impact on a disease like that.
Now listen, the one part of me wants to say, I'll look it up and I'll get back to you. But the other part of me wants to make up an answer and put out a 7-minute YouTube video on it and see what kind of.
Can I do a whiteboard about it?
Dude, we can. It's actually the entire whiteboard is the chimpanzee shitting in its hand and throwing it at the wall. That's the whole video, right there.
Can we do the Wojak meme where he's using the brain as a litter box? Matt explains manganese as a fungicide, and the cat's just.
The only way you can make this video is if you have your shirt off the entire time, please.
So I just pulled up my soul test. And
soul test
from my soul test from last year.
Did you get that done in Mississippi State?
Got that done down at Waypoint. They did the Malek 3 on there, and I had the Malek 3 on there. I got 76 parts per million on the manganese.
Oh God, you're really letting your inner redneck shine through here.
Those are rookie numbers.
Speaking of, those are rookie numbers. Speaking of people from the South that don't sound like rednecks, I'd just like to acknowledge your hat and say hi to our say to our friend John Ware at the Lawn Forum, hi, thank you for former guest.
Strong shout out to the Lawn Forum. And if anybody's
Absolutely.
in here and is looking for a place to go hang out and learn and all that fun stuff, you definitely check out thelawnsforum.com. There's very few places like it on the internet. It reminds me of Lawn Site way back in the day where I originally found Ray, and the Lawn Forum's how I found Ryan DeMay, and it really is. It's an awesome place. So yeah, definitely shout out to John Ware et al. Over at thelawnforum.com and the Lawn Forum Discord. You can go to the lawndiscord.com and play around in that space too. Boy, let me tell you that if the Grass Factor Discord is the Wild Wild West, the Lawn Forum Discord is like Las Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yeah. I had a client that just told me they came back from Vegas and they were there over 420, and apparently some things happen out there on that day that
What happens on that day?
I can't say on this stream, but I will tell you when we go to the after show, because I was even shocked about some of the stuff that was like just normal. So anyway, okay. So the manganese thing, and then the pH thing, and this is not speaking directly to you, but I think using acidifying fertilizers like an ammonium sulfate, I don't think you need any phosphorus based on past practices, so we're good there. If you did, I would recommend MAP over DAP if you really had to, but you could get by with DAP too.
Yeah.
So
Phosphorus
again,
was
trying.
I'm sorry, potassium was at 135 parts per million, which is also low. And I've been trying to remedy that with some
It's all right.
sulfate of potash, some 0050, like
0.50, yep.
twice in the spring,
That's
twice
fine.
in the fall. Try and get those rookie numbers up a little bit.
That's fine.
I wouldn't consider that low, by the way.
Well, this bar graph
Either way.
does, and
Oh,
I
shut
only
up,
look at the bar graph.
Oh boy, here we go. Them's fighting words. Another thing, we're gonna have to put out another PSA right now. Do not look at the bar graphs on your soil test and take it as gospel as far as what is low and what is not low. That's not how this works. Because what's funny is if you get a soil test from Penn State versus one from insert random lab here, WaterZag, for instance, you're gonna have approximately the same parts per million value, but two wild ass different K recommendations according to as far as what's considered an appropriate level. Isn't Penn State still up there like 250 or something?
All their stuff is what it is. Hey,
It's
you guys set your
high.
own numbers. It's high. It is high. But hey, I guess they're not wrong, right? Something like that.
I don't know. I mean, I would think, Michael Woods would probably fight about it. Hey, I mean, he wouldn't. But
I'm just looking at some links here. Go ahead.
I know it's coming through too here, and I was going to share this one. This is from UMass that talks a little bit about manganese sulfate at a rate of 2 pounds per acre in the spring, and the cultural management of Kentucky bluegrass and summer patch. So pretty interesting here. Look at what have you got here, DeMay?
What?
What is this?
This is the turfgrass proceedings. This is their annual conference that they have, and then they do some great write-ups every year talking about they really dive deep on the chemistry side, right? And show you different programs and things like that. But the whole point is you run down through here and get to the data tables.
Yeah. Here we go.
There's you can really start to look at some of the differences, right, in some of the experimental treatments versus the branded agency products, things like that. So there is a absolute shit ton of data in here to unpack. And I don't know, with Bruce retiring over there, I'm not sure what the succession plan, but like Bruce was one of the top 2, 3 turf pathologists in the country, if not the world. So, that's a big deal for them to see him go. I'm sure he'll be still involved in some ways, but
Do you,
it's yeah.
do you have an irrigation system?
Do.
Okay. Do you know the pH of your water coming out of your
Oh,
irrigation
that's a
system?
great question.
No idea.
I'm
time to
just, and this is me throwing handfuls of doo-doo at the wall. I have no idea if this factors into any of it.
You and the
But I
chip?
would be curious if, I'm putting it out for discussion actually, because I have no idea. Is it possible that high pH irrigation water may increase disease severity of summer patch in Kentucky bluegrass?
It would have to be some really hard ass water. I don't know, Ray. What do you think in terms of? And I don't want to speak too much on like what would be a irrigation water situation, especially a domestic water, right? Because Brandon here's got city water. Its ability to
Mhm.
influence pH in such a way that it's going to move it, say, multiple tenths of a point, which if in some cases that's just called the way it goes. In other cases, that's the my soul margin of error.
Okay. The factor there would be, let me ask you another question. How hard is your water?
We don't have any hard water issues.
Okay. So
That I can
then
even
if you don't
remember.
have any if you don't have any hard water issues, then that is where I don't see your irrigation water as having a negative influence. Conversely, if somebody tells me that their water is hard, there's a lot of calcium and magnesium coming out of their, municipal water supply, then I would start to look at that and think, is that water coming out of their irrigation tilting the soil pH towards the basic side of things or the alkaline side? And I hear this all the time from people, by the way, where they tell me when they water, it keeps the grass alive. But if it rains, the grass is a lot greener and healthier. And all I have to do is look at their water. And of course, the grass will respond better to rainwater because the water that they're watering with is full of alkalinity and salts. Because that's the problem that I have here in Hawaii, by the way. Our tap water is full of alkalinity and salt.
What is considered high alkalinity? So I'm looking at the St. Louis Water Quality Report right here, and the average level detected pH is 9.4. They quantify their acceptable range as 8.3 to 10. As far as their calcium levels, 31.4 parts per million. Hardness total as CaCO3, calcium carbonate, as 140 parts per million. Low iron, none detected as far as iron is concerned, but and a non-carbonate hardness as 89 parts per million. So to be it totaled a TDS of 288.
That would be considered rather hard, actually. Actually, be considered kind of hard water, right
And
there.
and this could be one of those situations too where you may not see it because you don't have a lot of iron in your water, and therefore it's not leaving. It may leave like scale or whatever, but it's not leaving those red smears. Like I've got a lot of iron in my water, and it's very obvious. You see it, right? You see iron stains where a shower drips or something, right? And you're like, damn it,
Mhm.
man! Grabbing the acid to get it off, kind of thing. So it could be one of those things. So now that I see this, and I don't know if you're in St. Louis proper, and that's where this pull from, and I'll actually share it with you, J Pink, here, so you can throw this up. But no, I mean that to me, that's a high pH, and I'll go ahead and at a 9.42 was the average level detected. Now I'll ask the question again: is this could this be a contributing factor to proliferation of summer patch?
I'm going to say again, I don't know, but if you would simply water every day for 10 minutes, like my YouTube video says, and if you'd buy this Heritage G fungicide and some Magical, do all those things, I think it'll be fine. I mean, that's just me as a golf course lawn professional saying that. What do I really know? Couldn't have timed it up any better. I love you, Derek.
Teed it up.
Yeah, I wore my form-fitting G-string tonight, so those fives are starting to get packed in there pretty tight. Be careful, man.
I will test the pH of the water. I really don't think we have, at least, I don't know, I could just...
You say that, and you know what? You're jinxing yourself because it's going to come back. It's going to be like 8.8,
Oh my!
and you're going to be like,
we need to go get a salt. Yeah, I really don't know.
Yeah. What, honey? What is that? Oh, that's the sulfur burner that I'm going to put in the basement. No big deal. Totally fine. Most homes around here have been doing this because it ups the resale value. See, I saw it on HGTV last weekend, and yeah. I mean,
Well,
it seems
or else-
totally logical.
Or else, alternatively, imagine the 250-gallon tote right next to the backflow, a dosatron, and that tote is full of 50% liquid sulfuric acid.
It'd be it's a great thing, that the kids can share someday. Yeah, we used to do chemistry experiments in the backyard with Dad's tote of sulfuric acid. It was great.
Do not put the garden hose in the tote of sulfuric acid, please.
We didn't even need a hood because
Please.
we were outside, right? Remember, don't sniff, always waft.
So then, okay, let's talk about the manganese sulfate.
Yes.
Thing, moving right along.
Look, that was a fantastic. Look at that. He went. You know what he did right there? That was a TV anchor move. He's switching over to TV. He went from camera 1 to camera 2.
To camera 2.
You learned that.
That was him right there. Yeah, that's true. All right.
And
let's talk
another
about
great
the manganese
question.
sulfate.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh no.
No. You please.
Telly said, does high pH water affect herbicide and fungicide efficacy? And that is a definitive yes.
Yes.
And it
Total
depends
yes.
on the chemistry, right? Like, for instance, sulfonylureas are going to enjoy high pHs, extend the life of high pHs, and that could be to detriment, a la metsulfuron methyl, for instance. And then on the flip side of things like synthetic auxins are not going to enjoy high pHs, and you'll have a lower tank life out of whatever it is you mix. So, if you mix for one day and you expect to save it for a month and come back and spray it again, and you're going to see, horrific efficacy out of that product compared to where you were when you started. Now, on a chart that, at a pH of 8, the half-life of the fungicide is 12 hours. At a pH of 9, the half-life of the fungicide is 30 minutes, right? So it can be quite significant. Now, there's going to be some that are quite tolerant of it as well, too. So it varies by active ingredient. And the frustrating part about that is that there's not a lot of information on labels specific to that. And so really it's up to you to sniff that out. And it's oftentimes it's not easy to do. There's just not a lot of data out there that's easily accessible about it.
Actually, Matt, for a lot of the products, and funny thing is that especially the older products, they often warn about putting the product into either an acidic or an alkaline solution. They'll warn about it, and
Yeah.
me being kind of an old timer, I became rather aware of it because for a lot of the older chemistry, for example, the older chemistry was extremely sensitive to this phenomena called alkaline hydrolysis.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and alkaline hydrolysis means that if you throw that into water with a pH over 7, your half-life of that active ingredient can be measured in minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say minutes, I'm not kidding in that can mean where, say, you go to your barn and you stir up, a tank of this stuff, and by the time you get it out to where you're going to spray it, because your water pH was over 7, by the time you get to where you're going to actually spray it, that tank mix is essentially garbage. And it does no good. And of note, the fungicide that is probably the most sensitive to alkaline hydrolysis is 3336. The
Did not know that.
the DMIs and the strobilurins are less sensitive, but 3336 definitely has an issue with alkaline hydrolysis.
Son of a bitch. All right. So what was the question? What was the question related to? The manganese sulfate. Let's dive down that rabbit hole quick.
And
I
I'll
was
just
just
throw
gonna-
this in the chat for people to look at. Go ahead.
I was more or less just going to ask application timing for manganese sulfate. Say I was to go down to, I looked at my local elevator. They have it there. I can go get it. It's
Mhm.
very, very affordable. It's like $25 for a 50-pound bag of that stuff.
Mhm.
I don't know if I need that much, but what's application timing for something like that for someone in my position?
I mean, I
So-
would be on. Go ahead. You guys go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, as far as everything I've read about it right now, it says in the spring. What a vague ass answer that is. And again, I have no experience in this realm, so I don't know what in the spring means. What would you equate that to be, DeMay?
I mean, I would have no qualms about running it right now at low rates, bi-weekly. So, talking like, trying to think. I gotta go back and look at my notes on the exact rate, but I want to say like about a quarter pound or so, like something like small rates like that, and every 2 to 4 weeks. You're just trying to go light and frequent with that, not sit there and carpet bomb the shit out of it. How's that? So
Fair enough.
don't
The stuff I'm looking
don't
at
go-
is 32% manganese.
Okay.
So
and that's manganese sulfate, the technical material powder. And so what you're going to be doing with that is the literature that I've read about that says apply, I think, 2 to 4 ounces per 1,000 square foot in adequate water, and then irrigate afterward. And you keep on doing it. And just keep on doing it. And what that is that's just to slowly and gradually build up levels of manganese in the soil. And a little bit earlier, you mentioned mancozeb, one of my favorites.
allegedly manganese.
And
For the roses.
okay, for the roses and the azaleas, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But
My man.
here's why mancozeb is a very good product. And in the 1990s and early 2000s, I used quite a bit of it on turf grass. But the reason why it was effective is the way mancozeb was used in the old days was, imagine applying 8 ounces per 1,000 square foot of mancozeb wettable powder every 14 days. And now that this information on manganese has come to light, I'm imagining that applying mancozeb in that fashion would reach the point, and I've seen this for myself, where I noticed after, I want to say, the fourth or fifth application like that, guess what? The grass is this ridiculous shade of green and no more disease.
Sounds
So I
like
think
fake
what you
data
just
to me.
said is if I'm spraying the mancozeb on the roses and the boxwoods and what have you, and I get some spray drift over into the turf, right? Um, and I'm applying that with some of the manganese sulfate, that could potentially lead to less disease and better looking turf grass. Is that what you're saying, Ray?
Yes, absolutely.
And I just
Absolutely. I mean,
go ahead.
the areas that are next to the flower beds, I'd imagine that they would have the least disease-prone turf because of that, that mancozeb overspray.
Right. Yeah, it's all that
Because
overspray, that drift that comes from spraying the roses.
yeah, because again, mancozeb is, I know that as zinc and manganese ethylene bis dithylcarbamate. That's the actual chemical name of the fungicide. And I'm imagining that zinc and manganese make up a significant portion of the molecular weight of that chemical. So you're essentially applying a lot of manganese and zinc when you apply mancozeb, especially when you're going into the I want to say the rose black spot or azalea downy mildew rates.
So, jeez. So the only other thing I just went back and looked at my old notes from golf course days, and 2 pounds per acre, which is just about 0.75 dry ounces per 1,000 square feet. And doing that as a 2-app in the spring, and then we would check our levels, like we would do a soil test in middle of summer ish, right, and then adjust if we needed to for fall. So just those 2 apps alone should be sufficient, and run with that and see what you get. So that 50-pound bag is going to last you a while.
Yeah, I'm not gonna buy a 50-pound bag. I've also
Yeah, you
seen
might go
some
buy a
4-pound.
5-pound.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
4-pound bags I think is probably going to be sufficient. So
Yeah,
we're good.
there you
That's
go.
the thing about the elevator is it's great, it's cheap, but I got to store all that shit. So I don't know what I'm going to do with all these 50-pound bags of things that they want to sell me.
Put it next to the sulfuric acid, man. That's fine.
Strangely,
Yeah.
you can actually pour it into your sulfuric acid as well.
Oh, the manganese sulfate.
It's safe.
Yes.
It'll dissolve
Yeah,
greatly.
No, and in fact, in the old days, I was reading these old texts on golf green maintenance, and get this one, Matt. They would be instructing people on making a tank mix of sulfuric acid, ferrous sulfate, and manganese sulfate.
Yeah, that's not for the faint of heart. And if for anybody listening right now that gets this wild ass idea that you want to start playing with sulfuric acid, don't. Adding
Don't.
sulfuric
Please
acid
don't.
to water is very exothermic.
Oh, okay.
It gets
Yeah,
super hot.
yeah.
You're gonna hurt yourself. Don't even go down that road.
We are literally talking shit right now. We're talking in fantasy world. We're making jokes. Please, seriously, this is our disclaimer to not do anything like that. You don't need to do that. It's not going to help you more than it's going to hurt you physically, mentally, spiritually, and listen,
Emotionally?
Nobody's going to love you longer and harder than your hands, and you want to keep those and hang on to them as long as possible. So stay away from
stick to citric acid, stick to acetic acid. I would even stay away from glacial acetic acid. That can be that's brutal stuff too. So stay in that citric or dilute acetic, and you'll be just fine. You could even play with malic if you wanted to. A little malic acid in your body.
Yeah.
All right, so what else we got here on from a fertility standpoint, cultural practices, mowing. What else? What else do we need to dive into here? What do you think some of the other buttons you're going to push this year to hopefully, crank it up another notch here coming into 2022?
Raised that mowing height quite a bit. I think when we
Where did
first
you? Would you?
spoke,
Yeah,
I
yeah, you're
started
like
at
half
like
an inch.
half an inch, between half 3/4 inch, which was just asinine. No one should ever do. Nobody should
Dude,
ever do that.
anybody who's like anything below 3/4 of an inch on bluegrass is just dumb. I'm sorry, but it's dumb. Um, okay, anything under 3/4 of an inch on bluegrass, Ray, is like somebody telling you that they're gonna mow Bermuda at like 2 inches or higher. It's just dumb. Okay, it's inversely proportional there on the mowing heights between those two. Okay, so now what is it at? What are you like, an inch or so? Or what?
I'm about an inch and a quarter right now, which I
By the
think.
way, this picture,
Beautiful.
I love the tree strip, the 50/50 tree strip
Oh, you like
pattern.
that? That's about the only way I
But
can cut it.
that's fucking gorgeous. I love
It
it.
is. It looks
Sorry.
nice.
Oh, this is just pure sex. Looking at
That
this,
is
seriously.
that is really burned in.
Can we cut out the pure sex wave of Ray? Can we clip that out because we need that as a button on the roadcast for sure.
Okay.
Okay, and we can slow it down. Can we slow it down? Crank the bass up and turn the treble down. Like we can really play with this a little bit. Anyway, so go on. So the mowing height now is you said around 1 inch.
It's about 1 1/4. Depends
Okay,
on
that's
what front roller I'm using on the trimmer. But
okay.
I think it looks the best at that mowing height, honestly. And I mean, the color, just the way it responds, the amount of stress. I mean, there's a lot of things that factor into that, but that's about as low as I want to take it. This picture is what it
Fine.
looks like today. This was taken last week, and I think it's definitely peaking at this point.
It looks nice as hell. There's no doubt about it. And as it should this time of year, right? If it looked like garbage right now, there'd be major issues at play. But I mean, damn. That thing looks really good.
It does. It does.
Looks good now. Just wait.
Well, and again, this is just it's a slow drum beat of doing all the right things in sequence and in cadence, when you need to. And so I think the next step here is not getting too heavy-handed with your growth regulators. I think, lower rates, a little bit higher frequency. Watch your growing degree days. I mean I can't overstate the importance of the research that Kreuzer et al. Did on that piece, and people that are applying growth regulators now that are doing it without using that as a guidepost are just, well, it's more than just guessing. It's damn near irresponsible because you can, we've probably caused more harm than good by not doing that over the years. And I think I've told the story many a times where people were always like, oh, start out at the label rate and then you got to crank that rate up. Like by midsummer, you got to crank it up even more. And it's like, the self-fulfilling prophecy of, man, turf looks kind of rough. Yeah, and now it won't grow either. And it's like, well, not only have you, completely shut it down, but you've also stacked these apps such that the physiology of the plant is literally collapsing in front of your eyes, right, for no apparent reason, and you can't figure it out. So that's good stuff. So what, from a PGR standpoint, what is the plan and what's the pivot this year? Knowing you got some of the DMIs going out, are you adding different fungicides into the program to kind of wean yourself off of some of those, say June, July, August DMI apps, or what's the game plan as it relates to
question.
the PGR fungicide interaction?
The game plan with the PGR is to follow the growing degree days, right? That's something I learned early on that, that's something that you have to take as gospel. And when incorporating the fungicides into that, obviously, I'm running it on the PGR at about 0.25 ounces per thousand, or sometimes even 0.20, which I think label rates are like 0.5 or 0.6 or something ridiculous. And the label even says, run that rate every 2 weeks during peak growth season, right? Which I think is taken literally, and it's definitely something I've learned the hard way to not do that. So the DMIs, I'm still running alongside the PGRs, but I'm backing off the PGRs quite a bit because the DMIs are giving me some regulation. So you don't need to run those in conjunction as high as you normally would. So I'm going to keep running the fungicides at the full rate, and if I need the regulators, I'm going to run those at the lowest rate I possibly can, if I even use them at all. Um, if according to the growing degree days, because we were way behind the growing degree days this year compared to last year,
Mm-hmm.
and so I really haven't had to dabble too much with those.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a slow spring, slow start to not get so crazy in those that we're screwing ourselves over. So that's good. So what about the fungicide piece though? Like, is it something that are you going to buy some of the newer chemistry that get yourself away from that, or what do you see there as your answer going forward, or is it just literally, hey, I'm going to cut enough of the PGR out that I don't feel so bad about putting that DMI out there, and that's sort of the plan, or what? Like, how do you make that value judgment between, okay, adjusting products versus adding new products? And I understand that there's an expense on the latter of
Correct.
those two options. So
So
how
I was
do
going
you
to tell
make
you
that value
probably the
judgment?
former of that. That as far as that approach, because I've got quite a few in the rotation that I've already invested in, right? So I've got the 33, 36. I've got, I'm just going down the list here. I've got Armada, Manzate, and then I've got some Alliot too that I use for the brown patch, because
Oh
brown
wow.
patch is really bad here. So
Hmm.
I've got a significant investment in those fungicides, and so I want to try and incorporate those, continue to use those in the plan, but use them in a way that is less destructive to the turf. So um,
it's always it's
if
always
if I
it's
can
always a good
reduce the
Okay,
what
Brandon.
is the we need to have that as a label, a label edition rake, and we write to the EPA and say, here's the rate for brown patch, here's the rate for dollar spot, here's the rate for, I just don't want to fuck this up.
Okay, uh, when you don't want to add to growth regulation, you just said something very important, because the fungicides that do not add to the growth regulation effect are Manzate and Elliot. Okay, that is in fact, honest truth. That is the suggested fungicide treatment for a bent green in the summer. And a bent green in the summer is probably as sensitive as you can get regarding turf grass and what you don't do to it, because let's see. Yeah, as Ryan said, golf supers have lost their jobs
Mm-hmm.
because they hit their greens with the full rate of a DMI in Midwestern heat. That just is something you don't do.
that was the justification of adding the clearies in there to run, you know, um,
Mm-hmm.
peak stress. So June, July, August, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe reserve the Armada for spring and fall when I'm not going to
Okay,
be putting it under so much stress.
that is the actual suggested thing to do. Is they, now that what I've been reading about using DMIs on cool season is you try to use them as much as you can on the shoulders of the season. So early spring while it's still cool, go for it. Uh, Fall when it cools off again, go for it. But rethink it in midsummer heat. Just rethink it. That's just the current good practice that they suggest when using something like that, and that applies doubly true if you're going with the first generation DMI like propiconazole, because propiconazole is probably an example of something where I think that might have been a good PGR, but it just so happened that it did a very good job of managing diseases.
It was
Seriously.
one of the ultimate FAFO products in turf history,
Mm-hmm.
right there,
Mm-hmm.
right up there with I don't know, guys, biocharkin, something like that.
Speaking of FAFO,
You weren't.
Speaking
Hey,
of-
you weren't. I was trying to snap your attention. I was trying to get it to you.
Yeah, you did. So actually, I tweeted about
Oh,
the
fuck.
irrigation
Jeez.
pH, water pH, and severity of summer patch in Kentucky bluegrass. I'm just curious if anyone knows. I've never seen it talked about. Now it's in my head, and I feel like I need to come to some sort of I don't know. I want some sort of answer on this. I want to read the discussion actually more than anything.
I'm
that
probably going to
people
test the
can start
pH of my
discussing
water
this on.
tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm
That's-
Oh, boy.
I'm
that's not motivating
curious.
me.
I'm
I'm going to lose
curious
sleep
how
over it,
how it
not
turns
knowing
out.
the pH of my water.
I've
Yeah, you know,
That's
trust
where
me,
we're at.
I've got a pH meter just about and everywhere I spend time. I've got one on the table behind me here. I've got two at the office. I've got one in my office in Lenore City, and you never know when you're going to need to test the pH of whatever it is you come across. They come in handy, and they're affordable. They're not that expensive. It's like $20.
I mean, listen. What a better way to start a blind date, or meet somebody from a dating app. Say, hey, listen, can I test the pH of your saliva and just make sure that we're gonna mesh well
Compatible?
here? Is that
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't have
Yeah.
an acid-base reaction take place right here, and they're generally exothermic, and some sort of salt is formed, and we can't have that. Okay.
Listen? If we're gonna have the baking soda volcano thing, we're gonna do that south of the equator and later on this date. All right, sweetheart.
All right, we've got to start wrapping this up.
Yes.
Brandon,
Yes.
do you have any questions for us so we can continue this conversation in the show after the show?
No, I mean, I beat you guys up with questions all the time, and you guys are always really good to get back to me and be helpful, and I think that's awesome. For those of us that are willing to go, we take 10% of the information from you and go find the other 90%. And I think for those of us that are willing to do that, that's fantastic. Speaking of FAFO products, I'll kick us off on a good note here. You don't spray sulfentrazone on your Kentucky bluegrass in June. I just want, if you're considering managing Kentucky bluegrass and have nuts edge,
man.
do not
Listen,
do
The
that.
Bermuda. What rate, by the
Listen,
way, what
I-
rate should you not apply sulfentrazone to Kentucky
I can't
bluegrass
even
in June?
remember. I can't
Yeah.
even remember what the rate was. Just don't do it, and that's all you got to know. Just stay away from the sulfentrazone.
I don't like
Okay.
that stuff. Yeah, go on.
Okay,
But anyway.
that's just like a good PSA right there, because people often ask me, why do I keep sulfentrazone and carfentrazone on the truck? I get asked that, and they ask me, but doesn't sulfentrazone do everything that carfentrazone does, and vice versa? And the answer is no, because carfentrazone is safe to use at higher temperatures, whereas sulfentrazone will burn your turf to a crisp in hot weather, especially if that turf is not Bermuda. And even if it is Bermuda, you may experience a little bit of tip burn. Just putting that out there as a PSA.
I got a little more than tip burn. I got some burnt toast.
Yeah.
What I got, Ray. So
Yeah.
that was a hard lesson learned, and I'll no longer be doing that. But you guys have been instrumental in my overall knowledge, in the very limited knowledge that I do have, in just answering questions, making sure I have an understanding of what I'm getting myself into, and just want to tell you guys I appreciate all of the time that you take to educate folks, and for those of you that would normally get paid to do something like this, it really goes a long way for people like myself that really want to understand and learn.
Listen, I think we've all grown to deeply appreciate what little and seemingly insignificant impact that we can have on people. Like, again, I've said this before. When we started this, it was definitely just to talk amongst friends, and it turns out that people enjoy listening to hear us talk and take this back and use it in something that's a hobby for them or an escape from whatever it is they do in a day-to-day. And that still blows our mind, and we're grateful for it. But we're just up here jamming, doing what we love to talk about because we're all nerds. And I know for a fact with every fiber of my being that we cannot help it. We just can't. So it is what it is. And now it's time to go have those conversations in an adult forum. And I don't mean the Penthouse Forum, because that's just a little too risque for what we're able to provide as part of our membership content, which if you are not currently a member, 2 options to join. We can go ahead down there and click the join button on YouTube. We'd prefer if you went over to www.patreon.com/burn and return. Check us out over there. Barthoda, unnecessary. Come over there, check us out.
Sir.
I don't know if we're any more of the price of an airport beer. We're probably actually far less than that because of inflation. So, while inflation has affected many industries, it has not affected our Patreon. So, again, you're getting more value for your money here if you invest in us versus anything else right now. We certainly do appreciate it. And with that, Brandon, thank you so much. We'll see you
Thank you for having me.
all on the next one.
Oh,
Love
real
you.
quick, Long Geek.
What?
If
Long
Long
Geek?
Geek is still watching,
Jesus Christ.
you can
grudge holding
lick-
motherfucker.
Yeah, you can lick my left and right testicle, and then followed by my taint. See ya.